semester 2, that your term 2, and that is the 10th chapter, Respiration in Organisms. So earlier also we have come across this word respiration, and the meaning that we understand, or the thing that comes to our mind when we hear the word respiration, is breathing, giving out of oxygen and taking in of oxygen and giving out of carbon dioxide. So that is what we do when we breathe. So in this chapter, it is explained that respiration not only includes breathing, it includes many other things. Okay. So here we'll start with the topic that why do we respire? Now, we know that our body is made up of cells. So what are cells? Cells are the small microscopic units. Okay. It is a small structural and functional unit of an organism. So cell performs many functions like nutrition, transport, excretion and reproduction. But to perform these functions, it requires energy. So where does energy it get from? It gets the energy from the food that we eat. Now how from the food that we eat does it get an energy? That is explained here. Now the food that we eat is converted into simple forms and then stored in the cells. And when we do the respiration process, what happens is we take in oxygen. And when the oxygen reacts with the glucose, the food that is stored in our cell in the simple form, with oxygen, when glucose and oxygen react with each other, they produce energy. Okay, therefore, all living organisms respire to get energy from food. So we breathe in, that is, we do the respiration process to get energy from the food that we eat. Now, during breathing, we breathe in air that contains oxygen. And when we breathe out the air, we throw out the air that is rich in carbon dioxide. Now, when we breathe in, the air that we breathe in is transported to all parts of the body, and at last it reaches to your cells, each and every cell. Now, when it reaches the cell, oxygen in the air helps in the breakdown of food. And in this breakdown of food, energy is released. So, the breaking down of food in the cell with the release of energy is called cellular respiration. Okay, cellular respiration is what? It is the breakdown of food in the cell in which energy is released, and it is done in each and every cell of an organism. Now the cellular respiration is divided into two parts. One is aerobic and other is anaerobic. In aerobic respiration, glucose is broken down with the help of oxygen, with the use of oxygen. Whereas in anaerobic respiration, food is broken down without using oxygen. Okay, in both the respiration, energy is released. In one, the food is broken down with the use of oxygen, and in the other, the food is broken down without using oxygen. Now, this is an equation given for aerobic and anaerobic. In aerobic, glucose in the presence of oxygen gives carbon dioxide, water, and energy. And this is the other equation given for anaerobic respiration, in which glucose broken down in the absence of oxygen gives you alcohol, carbon dioxide, and energy. Now, when does the anaerobic respiration, and who does the anaerobic respiration? So anaerobic respiration is done by the organisms such as yeast, because they can survive in the absence of air also. So that is why they do the anaerobic respiration, and they are called as anaerobes. Okay. 44. So these two equations you have to write when you write the definitions of aerobic and anaerobic respiration. And what are anaerobes? They are the organisms. Aerobic and what are anaerobes? And we also saw some equations which are related to aerobic and anaerobic. Now, what is an yeast? Yeast are single celled organisms, as our body is made up of many cells, right? But the yeast, the organism yeast, its body is made up of only one cell, and they always respire anaerobically. And what do they produce when they respire anaerobically? They produce alcohol. So in the wine and beer, these two are the beverages or the alcohols. Why they are called an alcoholic drink? Because in the wine and the beer, when yeast is added into it, that yeast produce alcohol, and that's why these two drinks are called as alcohols. They contain alcohol. Okay. Now, sometimes our muscles also do anaerobic respiration, but they do only for a short period of time. When they do anaerobic respiration is when there is a deficiency of oxygen. When the amount of oxygen that is required by our body is less, it is getting less. Okay. So when does that happen? When does our body get less oxygen? That is during heavy exercise, when we run fast, we do cycling, when we do walking for many hours continuously, or when we do heavy weightlifting. So when we do these all different types of work, our energy demand is very high. Okay. But our body is not able to supply that much amount of energy at a time, because our body is not able to give oxygen to the cells. Because if the cells will get the oxygen, they will convert it to energy, and our body will get the energy. But we cannot give oxygen at a very fast rate to our body, so that they reach to the cells. It is in a limited form, it is in a limited amount that we can give. So when the muscles of our body are not able to get that oxygen, so what does the muscles do? They do anaerobic respiration for a short period of time. So when our muscles do the anaerobic respiration means in converting the glucose into energy without oxygen. So at that time, what is produced? Lactic acid is produced. So at that time, what is produced? Lactic acid is produced. And because of the production of lactic acid, because our muscles in the muscles the lactic acid is produced, our muscles start to pain, cramps occur, our veins get stretched. These all things happen because of the production of lactic acid. Okay. Now, to get a relief from this cramps or from this pain, what we have to do is we have to take a hot water bath or massage onto that muscles, so that our blood circulation improves. Okay. To improve our blood circulation, we should give a hot water bath or massage on that place. So as a result, what will happen when we massage on that muscles, or when we take a hot water bath? The supply of oxygen to the muscle cells increase, and because of that, your blood circulation improves. So the increase in the supply of oxygen results in the breakdown of lactic acid into carbon dioxide and water. And as the whole lactic acid that is in your muscles get converted to carbon dioxide and water, your pain in the muscle slowly decreases, and at a point the muscles become very normal and there is no pain in your muscles. Okay, so this you have to remember. This equation is for anaerobic respiration in the muscles of a human being. Okay, the muscle cells. Our muscle cells, when they do anaerobic respiration, at that time glucose is converted to an acid, and that acid's name is lactic acid. Okay. Hope you are clear with this topic, that why do we breathe? Our topic here was why do we breathe? So we breathe to convert the food in the cells into energy. Okay, so we respire to convert the glucose that is stored in the cells into energy. Now, what is breathing? Okay, we know that we are taking in air and giving out oxygen, so that we call it as breathing. Okay, so the definition of breathing means taking in air rich in carbon dioxide and giving out air rich in breathing means sorry for that. Breathing means taking in air rich in oxygen and giving out air rich in carbon dioxide with the help of the respiratory organs. So there are many organs which help in breathing. So they all are considered under respiratory organs. Now, in breathing, there are two main things. One is inhalation and one is exhalation. So inhalation means taking in of air rich in oxygen into the body, and exhalation means giving out of air rich in carbon dioxide. And we know that this process of inhalation and exhalation goes on continuously until the time we live throughout our life. So, if we want to know that in a minute how many times we breathe means in 1 minute how many times we exhale and inhale. So, one exhale and one inhale means a breath. So, here it is written a breath means one inhale plus one exhale. So, how many breaths we take in 1 minute? So that is called as our breathing rate. So what is breathing rate? The number of times a person breathes in a minute is termed as breathing rate. So during breathing, what happens? Once we inhale, the next time we exhale. Then we inhale again, we exhale the next time. So these two inhalation and exhalation process is happening one after another, not together. So that is why it is said that inhalation and exhalation takes place alternatively. So this activity, this figure 10.2 shows you that how you can count your breath, how you can count your breathing rate. What you have to do is you have to take a deep breath, and then you have to on the watch you have to keep a count and see that in 1 minute how many times you inhale and exhale. So then you'll come to know what is your breathing rate. Now in this activity 10.2, they are telling you to check that if you are sitting normally, then at that time you see how many times you inhale and exhale. After you come running from outside, at that time you see what is how many times you are inhaling and exhaling. So whenever you are doing different activities, you have to check that what is your breathing rate, how many times in a minute, how many times you are breathing in and breathing out. So from this activity, you will come to know that your breathing rate is not same at all the situations, at all the conditions. When you are normal, when you come after a brisk walk for 10 minutes, after coming from running 100 meters race, or when you are at rest, all these different situations, your breathing rate is different because the requirement of oxygen is different at all these different situations. Now it is said in this blue box that on an average, an adult human being breathes out in and out how many times? 15 to 18 times in a minute. But on the same time, if he is doing an exercise, on the other hand, if the same person is doing an exercise, then his breathing rate increases up to 25 times per minute. Okay, so it increases to 25 times. So that is why while we exercise, not only we do breathe fast, we also take deep breaths, and because of which we inhale more oxygen. Because when we are doing the exercise, we have to break down the food fast and more energy is to be released. So this topic explains you about what is. At the time when we are doing very heavy exercise, we breathe very fast because our body requires more energy, and to release more energy, more amount of oxygen is to be supplied so that the glucose stored in the cells get broken down fast and energy is released. Okay. So in this activity 10.3, they have just shown you that what are the different activities we do in our day-to-day life, and according to that we have to decide that which activity has the lowest breathing rate and which activity has the highest breathing rate. Okay. Now the next topic here is how do we breathe? So after taking in air, where does the air go into your body? Normally, we take air through our nostrils, that is through our nose. When we inhale air, it passes to our nostrils, through our nostrils into the nasal cavity. So, nasal cavity is the bone structure which gives a proper shape to your nose. So, from the nasal cavity, where does it go? The air reaches our lungs through our windpipe. Okay, so we know there are two on our neck. We have two pipes. One is foot pipe and other is wind pipe. So the foot passes through the foot pipe, and from through the wind pipe, the air that we take in that passes through our wind pipe. The wind pipe is connected with the lungs, and the lungs are present in the chest cavity. Chest cavity is a whole bone structure with which inside which our lungs are there. So our lungs are kept inside this chest cavity so that they don't get damaged easily if we get hurt on our chest also. So this cavity is surrounded by ribs on the sides. So ribs are made up of bones. A large muscular sheet called diaphragm is present at the end of the chest cavity, which forms the floor of the chest cavity. Now, when we breathe, what happens when we breathe? What happens to the diaphragm and the rib cage? So, during inhalation, what happens is ribs move up and outwards, and diaphragm moves round down. Okay, so this movement increases spaces in our chest cavity and air rushes into the lungs. Okay, so this movement, the movement of the ribs moving up and diaphragm moving down, increases space in the chest cavity, and the air moves into the lungs, and the lungs get filled with air. The opposite things happens in the exhalation. Ribs move down, ribs come back to its position inwards, while diaphragm moves up to its former position, and this reduces the size of the chest cavity, and the air, because as the size has decreased, the air is pushed out of the lungs. So these movements in our body, we can feel it when we take a deep breath. Okay, so when you take a deep breath, you have to keep your palm on the abdomen, that is the lower part of your stomach, and then you can feel that your diaphragm is moving up, moving down, and your ribs are moving up. And when you release your breath, at that time you can see diaphragm is again moving up and the ribs are coming down. So you can feel that things. Okay, so this is a diagram given of of our respiratory system, in which you have lungs. Lungs are inside this bone structure called ribs. This lower muscular sheet which forms the floor of the chest cavity, that is the diaphragm. Now we can, in this activity 10.4, it is given that we can measure the size of our chest when we do the inhalation. At that time you have to take your observation, and at the time of exhalation. So you can see that the chest size at the time of inhalation is more as compared to the chest size at the exhalation time. Okay, so you can see this in this figure. So in this activity 10.5, they have explained you how to make a model of breathing. Hope you have understood how through an experiment we can come to know that what we are breathing out. So in the experiment, this we have already studied in our chapter, in our earlier chapter. In that same thing only we are going to do here in this activity. That is, we have to take a test tube. In that test tube, you have to fill it with lime water. Okay, then put a straw inside that test tube which dips into the lime water. Then you have to blow air from your mouth, and what you will see is this lime water turns milky. Okay, now when the lime water turns milky, it means that there is carbon dioxide in the air that we are blowing through the straw into the test tube. So when the lime water comes in contact with carbon dioxide, it reacts and gives us calcium carbonate, which makes the lime water milky white in color. So this experiment shows that the air that we breathe out contains carbon dioxide. Okay, so we come an end to here. We end here the topic of how human beings breathe and how which are the places, which is the path through which the air passes in our body when we inhale the air into our body. Okay, now next we are going to see that how breathing occurs in other animals. So it is said that animals such as elephants, lions, cows, goat, frog, lizard, snake and birds, they have a similar respiratory system as we have. They also have lungs in their chest cavity like human beings. But we will discuss here about two different insects. One is cockroach and other is earthworm. Okay. Now how do they breathe? Now a cockroach has small openings on the side of its body. There are small holes. Now through that holes air enters into their body. Okay, these small holes are called as spiracles. Okay, and then insects have a network of air tubes inside their body. So what happens? The air that has gone into their body through the spiracles go into the air tubes called trachea. Okay, and then it reaches to each and every cell of its body, and the food that is stored in the cell is converted to energy, and energy is given to their body. Okay, so this is way how it works in a cockroach. So through in a cockroach there are on the side of the body there are holes. Through that holes, which are called as spiracles, the air enters into the body, and then air passes through the air tubes called trachea to each and every cell of the body of a cockroach, and then the uh, oxygen that is present in the air mixes with the food that is stored in the cell, and energy is given to their body, and this is how the breathing occurs in cockroach. Now earthworm we also have studied earlier that earthworms breathe through their skin. Their skin is soft and slimy and moist. Okay, so the skin has small holes on it through which the gases can easily pass through, and inside their body they have blood vessels. It mixes with the blood vessels, the air mixes with the blood vessels, and this is how they breathe. Now, similarly, the frogs also breathe through their skin. So, frogs have two ways of breathing. One is through their skin, and other is through their pair of lungs. As we have, same like that only, they also have a pair of lungs through which they can breathe. So, they can breathe through skin also and through their pair of lungs also. Why? Because they have two ways of breathing. This is because they are an amphibian. They sometimes live in water and sometimes live on land. So that is why in their body they have two ways of breathing. So here we studied what the first topic, that what do we breathe out, and second is how other animals breathe. water. So we know that we are all aware with, we have studied, we know the common animal which we studied that lives underwater is fish. Okay. Now fish, we know that breathes with the help of gills. They have a organ in their body called gills which help them in breathing the dissolved oxygen. The fish cannot breathe the oxygen in the gaseous form. That is why if we take out the fish out of water, it cannot breathe. Oxygen is there in the air on the land, but it is not able to survive. Why? Because the gills are designed in such a way that they can only take in dissolved oxygen. They cannot take the oxygen in gaseous form. So that is why gills are called what? Gills are the projections of the skin. They are a part of an expanded form of a skin only. They are one type of, it's a form of skin which helps in breathing of for the fish. So gills have many blood vessels, many tubes which transport blood to each and every part of the body of a fish. So these blood vessels also help in the exchange of gases, that is the taking in of oxygen and giving out of carbon dioxide. Okay, so this is the only thing in this part, that is breathing under water. Now the last topic here is, do plants also respire? So up till now we have studied that plants do the photosynthesis process, that is the making of food. At that time they take in carbon dioxide and give out oxygen. We have studied up till now like that, right? So that is the only, that is the thing they are doing, this process, that process they are doing when they are making food. But like all other living organisms, plants also can survive. Plants can survive only when they also breathe like us. That is taking enough oxygen and giving out of carbon dioxide. Now, how do they do? We have already studied in the in the chapter 1 of this class that that leaves, they exchange gases through the stomata, the small holes called stomata in the leaves, right? So this, that is the same thing explained here, that they also take in oxygen from the air and give out carbon dioxide. In the cells, oxygen is used to break down glucose, as it happens in our body also. The oxygen that we inhale in is used to break down the glucose which is in the cell, so that the cells can produce energy and our body can get energy. And the other products other than energy is carbon dioxide and water. So how it happens in our body? The same way it happens in the other parts of a plant. So in plants, each part, so in the plants, each part of the plant does the respiration process independently. Okay, as the leaves do it through the stomata, the tiny pores called stomata. Similarly, the roots. How do the roots get to the respiration? We know that there is a gap between the soil particles. So that gap contains what? It contains air. And that air the root uses to respire or to breathe. So that it is said here that like all other living cells of the plant, the root cells also need oxygen to generate energy. So roots take up air from the air spaces. These spaces they are shown. There is a gap between two soil particles. So that from in that what is stored? Air is there. So the root cells take in air from the air spaces present between the soil particles and they do their breathing process. So that is why it is said that it is asked a question here. Can you guess why what would happen if a potted plant is overwatered? So what happens if you overwatered a potted plant? The gap between the soil particles is filled with water, and that is why the root cannot breathe, and because of which the root dies. So this is the thing. So we complete our chapter here of respiration. Hope you all have understood it properly.